I'm going to turn you over to Darren. He is our really great Connected North friend from the Alaska Sea Life Center in Alaska. And he is live at the center. And sometimes we see the sea lions swimming behind him, sometimes we don't. But he's going to tell us all about marine mammals. And maybe somebody who was in the shark session can ask a little bit about what's the difference between a marine mammal and a marine fish. That's, classification of animals. And I'm going to turn it over to you. So are you okay, Darren, for sound? There he is. Can't hear you though, Darren. You just might have to activate your mic.
Testing, 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 testing.
We can hear you now, Darren.
All good.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so over to you. We're really excited. So over to you, Darren.
All right. Oops. Let's try this. There we go. Welcome, everyone, to the Alaska Sea Life Center. Our program today is all about marine mammals and their adaptations, so how they survive here in Alaska's oceans. As Mally was saying, sometimes we'll see a Steller sea lion back there. I don't see any movement, so it's possible at any moment that a giant animal will leap into the water behind me. It will not walk up beside me, I hope. That would be scary. But I just never know. So if they don't hop into the water, it's their choice, and I've got recorded video of those animals. So we'll be seeing Steller sea lions, maybe some spotted seals if they show up in the habitat, harbor seals on video, and possibly some other marine mammals throughout our program today.
Darren, maybe if we see a sea lion, do you think they could put in the chat, sea lion, and then we could turn around and look? What do you think about that?
If you see a giant sea lion, yes, throw that into the chat window. I'll try to keep my eyes open as well, but feel free to shout in the chat if you see a sea lion, and then we could take a look at them. So what I want to do first is just give you a little introduction to where we are. It sounds like we've got some new folks today that didn't join me yesterday. So let's take a look at a map first, where we are. Once again, technical difficulty here. I'm working in the dark. And I haven't seen any other humans in the building yet today, I don't think, because we've just got only essential staff on site. See if that works. There we go. All right, so here we are in south central Alaska, and we're right on the ocean. And if you look at our town from the air, you can see the town is surrounded by mountains, but we are literally right on the edge of the ocean here at the Alaska Sea Life Center. And that makes this a great place for us to take care of ocean animals. And that's what we do. We have a public aquarium where we care for injured and stranded animals from out in the wild. We also have our own resident collection of animals that are here for education. And we have some animals that are here for research as well, for science. So we do a little bit of everything here. And all of our animals are from right here in Alaska. We have about 5,000 animals total. You saw first our seals, then one of our former Steller sea lions, and now you're seeing some of our diving seabirds. So we've got puffins and guillemots and murres, auklets. You spotted a sea lion, good job. So that was in the recorded video. And I see, oh, we had a question back in the chat there. Is the seal in the camera stone? It's actually made of wood. The one behind me is a painted wood sign back there. All right. Elsewhere in the Alaska Sea Life Center, we have our touch pool where we have our invertebrates, sea stars, anemones, and crabs and urchins, cucumbers. Our visitors get to touch those animals. We do lots and lots of education programs with students like yourselves, both in person and via video conference. We do that year round. Here's a little glimpse into our animal rescue program. We rescue injured and stranded marine mammals from all over the state of Alaska. If possible, we will get them back out into the wild if they're healthy enough to survive on their own. And if not, we will make sure that they get a fantastic home at another zoo or aquarium. Some of them even stay here. And finally, here's a little look into the work of our scientists doing research here at the Alaska Sea Life Center. They are helping us to understand Alaska's oceans and the creatures that live there so that we can do an even better job of taking care of them both here at the Alaska Sea Life Center and out in the wild. It's a very important part of what we do here, the science that we generate. And that diver hopping into the water was heading out for a scientific dive. So we have a few folks who are trained as scientific divers, and they're specially equipped for performing science underwater here in Alaska. And you might imagine that the water is quite cold. So you may have noticed how much equipment that diver was wearing. He was geared up with a little over 100 pounds of equipment to head out into the ocean there. And that's because our bodies are not built to survive in that ocean. The water temperature here in this area of Alaska is around 5 degrees Celsius, just over 40 degrees Fahrenheit. And of course, our bodies can't handle water that cold. We can handle an air temperature that cold, but when you get in the water sucks the heat away from your body so much faster. So what we're going to talk about today is animals that are sort of like us. We are mammals, after all, but they're very different in that they are able to live in the ocean. So marine means ocean. These are marine mammals. And it sounds like some of you were learning about sharks earlier today. We're going to talk first about what makes a mammal, and then we'll compare that to fish like sharks. So some of the things that make a mammal, feel free to go ahead and put those into the chat. Say, all mammals have blank, or all mammals are blank. Put that into the chat window. I'm going to see what some of your answers are, and I'm going to aim my camera over to the seal habitat. There are seals in there. They're just being a little bit secretive right now, so you might see a little seal sneak by every once in a while. It's going to be a spotted seal if you do see one. There goes one now. Let's see. Mammals make milk for their babies. Very good. All mammals have hair or fur on their bodies. And they have live babies. They don't lay eggs. Of course, there are 2 mammals out there that do lay eggs, a little bit different from the rest of them. The platypus and the spiny anteater, also known as the echidna. Excellent. Someone said all mammals breathe air. Very good. So all mammals have hair. They breathe air. They have live babies, at least nearly all of them, and they feed their babies milk. And finally, there we go. All mammals are warm-blooded. And what it means to be warm-blooded is that the animal can keep its body temperature the same all the time, whether it's cold outside or hot outside. Did anybody notice that? All right. Whether it's cold or hot outside, the mammal's body on the inside stays the same temperature all the time. Now, the animal that just hopped into the water out there is Pilot. That is our largest animal here at the Sea Life Center right now. He is not quite 2,000 pounds. I don't know his exact weight right now, but every spring these big male Steller sea lions get really, really, really big, and then through the summer they actually stop eating and they lose a lot of weight. So his weight is constantly changing, but he's getting bigger right now, and will be getting bigger throughout April and May. By the end of May, he will have reached his biggest weight of the year, which will probably be a little over 2,000 pounds, so close to 1,000 kilograms this year. But he is still growing. He's going to be 11 years old this year, and he's a big fella. Not as big as Steller sea lions can get, though. They are the largest sea lions in the world. And we'll definitely show you some video of big sea lion. activity. But right now, Pilot's doing a good job of playing for us. Let me go ahead and walk over to the tank window so you can see how big he is compared to me as he swims by. I'll see if I can catch his attention with a little CD here, see if he likes something shiny today. Sometimes he cares what we have in our hands, and sometimes he really doesn't. Look, Pilot, I have something shiny for you, and you don't care. All right. He looked at me as he swam by, but nope, not worth stopping for. As you can see, Pilot is an amazing swimmer. Let me push this bench out of the way since there's nobody to sit in it today. We can see a little bit better. Pilot is a tremendous swimmer, and it looks like he could just stay in the water all day. But like you said, all mammals have to breathe air. So Pilot here is no exception. He is a mammal just like us. He's holding his breath while he's underwater. He could stay underwater for 10 or 15 minutes if he wanted to, swimming. He's an animal that could dive down about 1,000 feet underwater, 300 meters underwater. These guys could swim down. They don't normally dive quite that deep, but they can. And so they're very, very capable. The reason why they are such amazing divers and so good at holding their breath is because all of their food lives underwater. And so it's critical for them to be able to spend that much time underwater and explore so deep underwater because that's how they get their food. So imagine if you're sitting there at home in your bedroom and your mom or dad calls out, "Hey, I made you a sandwich. It's in the kitchen." And you say, "Oh, great, I'm starving. I'll be right back." You guys think you could hold your breath that long, all the way from your bedroom to the kitchen and back to go get something to eat? Probably, right? Probably most of you, unless you have a humongous house. But I doubt you could hold your breath all the way from your home to the nearest grocery store, or hold your breath to go fishing for half a day and then come back with food, right? We're not that good at holding our breath. And that's just only one of many reasons why we would be terrible at gathering food from underwater without tools. Like we use fishing poles and all sorts of great tools. That's one of our features that we're able to utilize. So mammals have to breathe air. These guys are no exception. Pilot's body, because he's warm-blooded, he's able to keep his body temperature nice and warm even though he's swimming around in that freezing cold water. And that's critical because he is warm-blooded. He's a mammal. He has to have a way to do that. And we would not be able to. That's the thing about us. If we jumped into that water just like this right now with just regular clothes on, my body would be cold in a matter of a minute or two. I would be in serious trouble and start having really a very difficult time functioning because the water would be taking heat away from my body so quickly. So with all those things that make a mammal that we share with these Steller sea lions, now we're going to talk about the things that are special about their bodies that allow them to survive out there in Alaska's oceans. And those special things about an animal's body that help it to survive in its environment are called adaptations. So we're talking about marine mammal adaptations. The first adaptation we're going to discuss is what allows these animals to stay warm in that cold water. And Pilot's body is around the same temperature as ours. It actually could be a little bit warmer even, but about the same temperature as our body on the inside. If I touched the outside of his body, he would feel cold on the outside. And it's not because he is cold, it's because all of his heat is trapped inside. Now, one thing that gives Pilot a little bit of an advantage over us is his body is huge, so most of his body is on the inside. Only his skin is contacting the water, and so all that mass of body is on the inside. So big animals have an easier time staying warm. But he has something special that not all mammals have, and I see Greg had a question. Does he have blubber? Indeed, he does. That is the adaptation that keeps these marine mammals warm. Blubber is a thick layer of fat. And when I say thick, I mean anywhere from a ½ inch, like 1 finger thick, to over 2 inches, like all of my fingers put together, of fat. And it goes all the way around their body, which is why when he swims by, you can see that Pilot is sort of football shaped. He is a very round animal. He's a circle in the middle. Unlike us, we are not just a giant circle, right? But these marine mammals, almost all of them are, and it's because of that blubber that keeps their body warm. So let's take a look at a nice big fat Steller sea lion there. You can see the shape of his body's huge and round in the middle. And we're going to compare these sea lions now to some harbor seals. And these harbor seals will look just like the spotted seals that we saw swimming by earlier. You notice as the harbor seal swims by, his body is indeed just shaped like a circle. But from the top side here, we can look and see it's more like a football. So he's round in the middle, but he's pointy at the ends. And that's important. That's that shape. We call it hydrodynamic. It's just like aerodynamic when you're talking about fast cars or fast airplanes. Hydrodynamic is a shape that moves well through the water. So a hydrodynamic body shape is very important. It's an important adaptation for these animals. And again, looking at him from the front, you can see he's just totally circular in the middle. But the hydrodynamic shape is not the only thing that makes these animals great swimmers, of course. They have these flippers. And if you look at the flippers on the front of the seal, they're quite small. And this is a big difference between seals and sea lions. Seals have very small front flippers. And you're welcome to try this at home, but I'm just going to hold my hands up against my armpits and flap them without moving my arms. I don't feel like I would go very fast in the water if I were swimming like this, right? So the seals, with their tiny little front flippers, they use those mostly for steering, scratching themselves right about here, and that's about it. So they will occasionally flap one, but mostly it's just kind of hanging them out there for steering. They use their big back flippers that sit like this on their body and paddle back and forth, side to side. They use those for power. So if we go back to our seal that was cruising by, this is the harbor seal again, you notice he's got these huge back flippers, and that's what he's using to paddle with. Because the front flippers are so small, they're not really effective for creating a lot of force, a lot of thrust to get through the water. So looking only at the back end of the seal, you can see they have a little tail that's right between those back flippers, but then the back flippers just paddle side to side. And that's how they cruise through the water. If you wonder why that seal is just sitting like that in front of the window, it was playing in the current that comes out down below that window. And so a lot of our animals love to just kind of stick their face into the current and hang out there. One of our spotted seals just cruised by. I was hoping he would come back by again here so we could compare that, since we just looked at a harbor seal. Again, spotted seals and harbor seals look pretty much identical to us. We can't tell the difference just by looking at them, but we'll see if this one is showing off his flippers right now, or is he's just really showing off his hydrodynamic body shape. That's the important thing there. They paddle just a little bit and their bodies cruise through the water. The same is true for Pilot. Now, Pilot is a sea lion, and instead of having little tiny front flippers, sea lions have these massive long front flippers that are extremely powerful. Those are the ones that the sea lions are going to use to paddle through the water. So there's a big difference between seals and sea lions. Is sea lions have these big long front flippers, and seals have little tiny short front flippers, and that changes how they swim. But both of them have this hydrodynamic body shape, so they don't have to work very hard to swim. You can see Pilot's definitely saving some energy right now. He's not exactly going fast, but he paddled once with his front flippers. That might take him all the way around the tank because of that hydrodynamic shape. So where we have to work kind of hard to get our bodies into that streamlined position for cruising through the water and swimming efficiently. These animals are already built like that. They're already built in a streamlined fashion. So fantastic advantage for them. All right, both seals and sea lions like to get out of the water, as we saw earlier, the sea lion just jumping in behind me. So let's go to some video of what they look like above water. And you might imagine they're going to look a little bit different when they're on land because of the difference in their flippers. And let's see, taking a glance at the questions that we've had. Oh, we had one question. Do we have a walrus at the center? Not currently, but we have, and I would love to talk about walruses a little bit later. So that'll be one of the animals that we can bring up. Oh, you said you can't see anything? You should see just the picture. Now you should see sea lion climbing out of the water. Let's try this. Yes, now. Okay. Huh. I'm not sure what was going on.
You can see it, Darren.
Okay, good. The viewer family said they couldn't see anything a few chats up there. So you notice this Steller sea lion is able to stand up and walk around up on land. It gets up on those big front flippers. Its back flippers turn forward like little feet. And that's how they're able to move on land. Now the seals also get out of the water, but they move a little differently. This is how the seals move on land. With that huge round body and those tiny front flippers, they can't stand up at all. They can just barely touch the ground with their flippers, and so most of the time their little front flippers aren't really doing much of anything. One thing about the blubber is it makes them kind of squishy, and so they bounce as they go if you watch them in slow motion. And they also jiggle, so as this seal cruises by here, you'll notice that his body sort of shakes like a big bowl of Jell-O, sort of Santa Claus-like. That's from that blubber. They are adorable, yes. And so that is going to change what kind of habitat these animals can use when they are on land. Steller sea lions will climb right up these steep rocky shorelines that we have in Alaska, but harbor seals have to find a very flat place, and sometimes that might be a piece of ice or a beach or a small flat rock. And those harbor seals are in our area. The spotted seals, like the ones in the tank here that we saw swimming around, we'll see if they're coming back by here. We've got Amac and Tunu. I can't tell the difference very well between these two guys. They were both rescued as pups back in 2010. So they are 10 years old now. Here comes one now. There we go. They were not able to be released back out into the wild, but the thing about spotted seals is they are an ice seal. They live up in the Arctic. And up there are lots of very flat beaches, but there's also quite a bit of ice. And so the spotted seals are one of the seals that we call an ice seal. That means they depend on the ice for their survival, often for giving birth to their pups, but also for resting. And ice is very important to them. So as the climate warms up here on planet Earth, and that Arctic sea ice is getting thinner and melting back farther each year, that is starting to cause some problems for some of these animals that depend on ice. And we're concerned for the future. We're not sure how much of an impact that will have on these spotted seals and other ice seals, but we know it's a major change for them, where there has been all this big, giant platforms of ice out there in the Arctic, and those platforms are getting smaller and smaller, farther apart. The Arctic ice cap is actually melting back farther each year, so it's definitely changing their habitat, and we'll see. Hopefully, these ice seals will be able to adapt to a little bit different lifestyle, but it's definitely going to be a change for them. Well, you can probably guess that both seals and sea lions, being fantastic swimmers and focused on diving down underwater, they both love to eat fish. And so we're going to take a look first at a harbor seal. and examines some of the features around its face, the senses that it uses to find those fish underwater. So just looking closely at this harbor seal, I want you to think about trying to find fish underwater, and what senses do you think would be important for these animals to find fish underwater? You can go ahead and put those in the chat. What sense do you think would be important for this seal to find fish underwater? Looks like the eyes from Mason. Sense of smell, the nose. Smell. All right. Let's take a quick look at sense of smell first. We'll focus on that big giant nose that he has. And then we've got sight and touch. Excellent. All right, so watch his nose here as we move forward. See what it does. Did you notice how his nose just sealed itself off? That's actually how their nose stays all the time until they want to take a breath, and then they will open their nose. So although they've got a decent sense of smell, they might even have a great sense of smell, they're probably not going to be using that smell when they're, or that sense of smell when they're underwater, because their nose just stays closed up. And the reason for that is, of course, just like us, they don't want water just rushing up their nose. It could get into their lungs. It could be dangerous for them. So they're probably going to keep their nose closed almost all the time when they're underwater. So the sense of smell might not be super important for them to find fish. Let's check out eyesight. This seal has humongous eyes. And indeed, they're kind of like cats. They can see really well in the dark, which is great. When you dive down underwater, the deeper you go, the darker it gets. So even in the daytime, it can be quite dark when you're a few hundred feet underwater. So having big eyes that are very good at seeing in the dark is fantastic. And that's a really important sense for them. Someone else mentioned the sense of touch, and that actually might be the most important sense for these seals and sea lions, because with these whiskers, they can feel the water itself moving, and they know if there's something else in the water with them. Whether they can see it or not, they can feel the movement of the water. And so if a tiny fish is swimming by, the seals know that. These whiskers are very sensitive. I also saw someone noted hearing might be important. I'm not sure how much they might use their hearing to find fish. They actually do have really good hearing, but it definitely doesn't look like it to us, right? We're used to animals that live on land, up in the air, and in order to hear well, you have big ears, like foxes, bats, cats, moose have huge ears because they need to capture as much sound as possible out of the air. But when you're underwater, the sound actually goes right into your head. That water is so dense, you more feel the sound than hear it. And so you don't even need an ear at all on the outside. Seals do have this little tiny hole. Sea lions have a little bitty ear that sticks out. That doesn't necessarily help them hear better, but they don't have big ears like land animals, and that would be it would be a problem for them if they did have big ears sticking out, because that would slow them down. That would not be hydrodynamic. So tiny ears are the name of the game for marine mammals, but that doesn't mean they can't hear well. In fact, a lot of them have really great hearing. So let's watch. The trainer is going to work with this seal, and you'll notice she uses the seal's sense of sight, touch, and hearing. She's going to talk to him, show him hand signals, and touch him as she gives him his fish. Let's watch how that works.
Good target. Good open. Good boy. You're so even. Good. 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 Good open. Good boy.
Now, you might have noticed when the trainer says, good boy, that's when she gives him the fish. And when he knows that fish is coming, he will stretch those whiskers straight out so that they are ready to feel that thing that's coming toward his mouth. So he can move those whiskers around, and he's got them stretched forward. Here comes the fish. It comes into his mouth, and then he can fold those whiskers back when he doesn't need to use them anymore. But that's when the whiskers are their most sensitive. Excuse me, is when they're folded out or stretched out forward.
Supper can be done if you're ready to go inside.
You probably also notice he's not really interested in chewing his food. He just swallows it straight down, swallows it whole. The reason for that is because both seals and sea lions have very, very sharp teeth that are great for catching fish, but they don't have teeth for chewing like we do. They don't have any molars in the back of their mouth. They just have sharp, pointy teeth for catching, and so then they have a nice big throat and are able to swallow their fish whole. Now that seal was eating pretty small fish. In a moment here, I'm going to show you a video of a sea lion eating a much larger one. But first, I want to show you how, if we put all these pieces together, I want to show you how quickly a sea lion can catch and eat a fish underwater. So watch, don't look away. It happens really fast. Couple of paddle strokes, and the fish is caught. Turns it head first, and the fish is gone. And so to be able to eat so quickly is really helpful for these animals that are in an environment where they can't survive forever while they're catching their food, right? They're holding their breath, and they can't stay down for more than 10 or 15 minutes, these sea lions. So the more they can do while they're down there, the better. So they dive down, they catch and swallow, catch and swallow, catch and swallow. Maybe they catch 3 or 4 fish on a dive that lasts 2 or 3 minutes. If they're really good, they can fill their belly on that one dive and then just go back up, get out on the rocks, lie down and sleep, which is what they do for a huge amount of the time that they are sitting around on land. They love to spend time in the water, but they're just so good at finding and catching these fish that it gives them the opportunity then to go and spend time just relaxing. And because they can access those super steep rocks, those sea lions have a really good time getting out of the water. They love to just be social while they're out there. They spend a lot of time out on the rocks, hanging out with each other, socializing. And part of socializing, being with your buddies, is making noise. And so although I can't hear you right now, you're able to communicate with me by typing. Of course, sea lions don't do that. I'm going to let you hear how these Steller sea lions, largest sea lions in the world, communicate with each other. We're going to hear the sound that a Steller sea lion makes. You might be imagining in your head sort of a barking noise. That would be from a sea lion a little farther south. These guys make a little different sound. It's more of a deep roar, extremely loud. You can imagine if there are 100 or 200 of those giant sea lions on a rock somewhere, all making those noises. It sounds like a zombie apocalypse. Everybody's going, always. They are very loud creatures and love to hang out together, love to make noise, love to yell at each other. That's what it sounds like to us. But they spend a lot of time doing that. All right, let's see how he eats this fish. Now, this animal's name was Woody. Woody passed away back in 2015. He was very old for a Steller sea lion. He lived here at the Alaska Sea Life Center for most of his life. He passed away at the age of 22, which is longer than most wild Steller sea lions would ever live, especially males like Woody. Out in the wild, they live maybe 15 years, maybe a few years longer than that, up to 18 years or so. So Woody was a big favorite here. He is no longer at the Sea Life Center, but he was super fun. And in this video, we're going to feed him a salmon about the size of my arm. Let's see how he eats it. One more little growl. All right, here it comes. Oh, my goodness. Chew your food, man. So again, that fish was like the size of my arm, in that video, Woody was a bit bigger than Pilot is now, but he's close. Close to that big, and Pilot will, there's a good chance that Pilot's going to get to be bigger than Woody ever was. We're anxious to see how large he gets over the next several years. Again, he'll be 11 this year and probably about 2,000 pounds, but not for another month or two. He won't be quite that big. All right, so we've seen lots and lots of seals and sea lions. I want to show you a few other, just some pictures to compare a couple different types of marine mammals that we have here in Alaska. This is another kind of seal that we haven't seen yet. We have them here at the Alaska Sea Life Center, just not in a place where I can show them to you easily. This is a ringed seal, another ice seal, and you can see the little ring-shaped spots. That's where they get their name, ringed seal. And look at how fat this animal is. This is Pimnik, one of our ring seals, and he literally just looks like a jelly bean. With flippers, just totally round, right? They don't look like they would even be fast swimmers at all, but they're quick. Look at how big those back flippers are. They've got a lot of power. What they are not is big. These ring seals are some of the smallest seals in the world. There's a shot of Pimnik next to Jamie. Jamie is a normal-sized person, I promise. She is not a giant. And you can see Pimnik is teeny tiny compared to her. He's about the size of the bucket that she's feeding him out of. But these little tiny ring seals live up in the Arctic, and they are the favorite food of polar bears. So in order to survive, this tiny little ice seal needs to be able to swim down under the Arctic sea ice and get away from those polar bears. So they need a thick layer of blubber, even though they're super tiny. Now, you asked about walrus. Here is a walrus. You might notice that this walrus doesn't look like he has blubber, but it kind of looks like he should, right? He's got this really loose, baggy, wrinkled skin. That's because he's very skinny in this picture. And he was a rescued walrus calf. This guy's name was Aku. And Aku came into the Sea Life Center early in his life because he had gotten separated from his herd. We're not sure exactly how or why, but he was not with any other walruses, and he definitely could not have survived on his own much longer because he was so thin, he was not getting his mother's milk. So this is what he looked like when he first came in. Not very happy, just generally sickly looking, very skinny. And about 6 months later, after we had been taking care of Aku, there he is in or on the same size kiddie pool down in Florida, where he ended up traveling to be at SeaWorld Orlando and be with other walruses. Because one of the things about walruses is they really just need to be together and touching each other. So here you can see, this was a different walrus calf from years ago. What we do when we get a walrus calf is we'll feed them through a bottle because we know they're not going back out into the wild. We need to spend a lot of time with these animals. And in order to get that blubber layer developed and to get them growing, they will drink about 2 liters of formula every 2 hours. And so there's so much fat in here. This would be like us sitting down and eating a whole carton of ice cream every 2 hours. That is how these animals grow so big and so fast. And eventually, of course, walruses have a huge thick layer of blubber. They can be up to 2,000 pounds for the females, 4,000 pounds for the males. And here's how much walruses love each other, love to be together. Even adult male walruses will all just pile up together on the beach. So when we have a little one here at the Alaska Sea Life Center, we have to spend a lot of time with that walrus calf, just keeping it company, basically. And they love to be touching each other. So I'm going to share some video with you here while we're on the topic of walruses so that we can see how important touching is for a walrus. And this walrus's name was Pakak. As soon as the DVD player wakes up again, there we go. There you see him cuddling with a human being with his face in the human's lap. Let's take a look first at how fast he would drink that formula. And this guy was probably about 250 pounds, say 120 kilograms. in this video. And you're going to watch that whole bottle will disappear in less than a minute. We're also hearing the sounds. It makes almost no noise while they're drinking. They just suck it down so fast. All right, so after a meal, it would be time for this walrus calf to just cuddle. And because they really want to be touched, you're going to see there he is, just laying his head on Tim's lap. Tim is not a walrus. Tim is a guy in a rain suit, right? And the rain suit, incidentally, is so that Tim can get cleaned off really easily. Because when we bring in a wild animal like this, we don't know if they might be sick with something, and Tim needs to get himself cleaned off before he goes on to the next animal or near people even. And so if you're wearing rain gear, you can hose yourself off, scrub yourself down with disinfectant, and move on to the next animal. Or simply take the rain gear off and contain most of what you might have contacted from that animal, and then take off your other clothes and shower before you move on. So it helps us to keep any sort of diseases that these animals might have, keep them contained. Of course, that's something we're all dealing with right now, but we're not dealing with rain gear. But when we have to be hands-on with an animal like this, rain gear is very, very helpful for someone like Tim not to have to take 10 showers a day. He's able to just scrub off the rain gear and rinse himself off and get clean again, get disinfected. But you can see Pakak was nuzzling his face against Tim's boot. He's got his flipper in Tim's lap. He just really wants to be touching. And if we left him alone, even for just a brief moment, this is what would happen. Now this is within seconds of Tim leaving the room. Pakak was lonely. He's calling for somebody. Literally seconds after Tim walked out the door. And we couldn't, it wasn't just Tim, it would just anybody that would sit with the walrus would be welcome. They just really need to be touching someone. And if we would leave them alone for just a few minutes, they start to get pretty desperately lonely. And so we have to balance this. We can't have them being totally dependent on people, but they are going to live in human care for the rest of their lives when we rescue a little walrus calf like this. So what we want to teach them is it's okay to be a little bit independent, but as quickly as we can, we get these animals healthy and safe, and then we transport them to another zoo or aquarium where they can actually be with other walruses. That's what they really need. This little guy, Pakak, had never met me before, but at this point, I was the only person around standing there with the camera. And after just a few minutes of Tim walking out the door, Pakak was ready to walk out the door with me and climb right over the wall to come out and be where I was. So that's how important it is for these walruses to be together, to actually be physically touching each other. And that's just how walruses are. Now, one last quick look at a walrus. An adaptation that they have is this extremely thick skin. So even this nice plump walrus, very blubbery, you notice has these wrinkles. And that's partly because their skin is so thick. It's actually thicker than my fingers, than one of my fingers, like as thick as my whole thumb. That's how thick their skin is. And so they've got these deep grooves, these wrinkles in their skin. I don't know everything about what benefits that might give them. But if you take a look at, of course, the tooth of a walrus, one of the front teeth, their tusks are these huge, long, pointy things, and they use these mostly for helping them to move around on the ice. All walruses have them, both males and females, and they actually use these to stick into the ice and help themselves crawl around with these giant fat bodies and these awkward flippers. They're not exactly graceful, and climbing out of the water onto a slippery piece of floating ice might be really challenging. So that's what these tusks are mostly used for, but they also use them for fighting. You can see they're not razor sharp, but certainly poking each other with those could be dangerous. And so having really tough skin might help them in that way too. But walruses do indeed have very thick, tough skin on the outside of their body. All right, we're going to go from walrus now to a much less sturdy looking animal. And this is the smallest marine mammal in the world. And here's the shocking thing. This is a sea otter. And sea otters are amazingly cute, but they have no fat on their bodies. So where all of these other marine mammals had that thick layer of blubber to keep them warm, sea otters do not. They only have their fur that is able to keep them warm. And I'm going to show you the sea otter's fur here up close. 1 second. My otter fur got buried. There we go. So you can see this little pup looks very fuzzy. The fur that I'm showing you is from an adult sea otter, but even the adults are extremely furry. They have so much thick fur. If we try to look between the hairs to just see the skin between the hairs, you can't. It's just all hair inside there, these fine little hairs. They're super tiny, and they are packed in there. So much that the amount of fur between my fingers right there, that is about 10 people's worth of hair. If we took all the hair off of all of our heads and packed it together, it would take 10 people to make this much fur for a sea otter. That's how many hairs are crammed inside there. So that's amazing. And the hairs are so close together that as long as they're kept nice and clean, kind of like what I'm doing with my fingers here, then air gets stuck between the hairs. The otter can literally just blow air in there and it just gets trapped in its fur. It only works if the fur is nice and clean. So in the front, instead of flippers, the sea otter actually has little paws that it needs to be able to use to grab and pull and twist and keep that fur clean. They do a lot of grooming. And so what we're going to see now is little video clips of an otter pup. Her name was Katmai. She was rescued here back in, I think this was 2012. And we're going to see a few of the different aspects of her care while she was here. When we get a sea otter pup, it's kind of like the walrus. They're going to require so much hands-on care because they can't take care of their own fur. And so we need to take care of it for them. You see that stack of towels there? That won't be enough to get this otter completely dry. But it's a start. And this is just around the clock, 24 hours a day. Someone needs to keep this otter's fur clean and dry. And I'm going to warn you, I'll give you a few seconds to turn down your volume if you need to. She is going to get very, very, very loud because she grabbed something that she wasn't supposed to have, and Jane, the vet tech who's caring for her, is going to take that thing away from her, and Katmai, the sea otter, is going to tell Jane that she's not happy. But they're very loud, so make sure your volume's not up too high. Here we go. Brace yourselves. A lot of the folks who care for these little otter pups wear earplugs back there because they're so extremely loud. And it's amazing for something so tiny to be that loud. Let me hear you, or let me show you what kind of sounds they make when they're happy and just kind of calm and content. Little squeaky noises, that's fine. But why do they have to be so loud? It's actually pretty important for a sea otter pup to be that loud. And the reason for it is that fur. Because until they're about 6 months old, they are not able to care for their own fur and keep themselves warm. They have to have their mom taking care of it for them. And before they're about 2 months old, the little otter pup simply doesn't weigh enough to go underwater. It can't. It's got so much air trapped in its fur. And Katmai in that video, she's about 10 pounds. I'm going to show you in a second here a video of her in the water, but you'll see she tries to go underwater and she can't. After that age, they lose some of their fuzzy pup coat and start to get it just a little bit heavier, heavy enough to dive down on their own. But until that point, they can't even go underwater. And so this little otter pup is left floating at the surface. The mom has to dive down to go gather some food. And when the mom comes back up, if the otter pup is not right there, or it's dark, stormy, waves are crashing and the wind is howling, the otter pup needs to get its mom's attention immediately so that it can have her care. It has to have its mom. So having that screaming, piercing cry is an important adaptation, believe it or not, of a sea otter pup. And they aren't that loud when they're older because they don't need to be. But when they're young, that's super important. But they have to have their mom. They've got that piercing cry that allows them to get their mom's attention right away. There's no question where the pup is and that it needs its mom. It's obvious right away. So back to our videos now. Let's see. So at this point, Katmai was still drinking from a bottle and would still be for several months, but we were just starting to introduce some solid food. So let's see how that was going. We chopped up little tiny pieces of clam for her, just like you would do with a human baby. You start them with little bitty pieces. And immediately these animals are going to start to be trained to float on their back facing the trainer, because they're going to work with people their whole lives. Now there she goes, trying to go underwater, and you see every time she goes down, her back end is still at the surface. So we gave her a pool that was shallow enough that she could reach the bottom, but she couldn't just dive underwater and swim because she's too floaty. Every time she pops back up, she floats like a cork because of all that air in her fur. She weighs about 10 pounds, 4.5 kilograms, and even at that, still when she floats at the surface, half of her body is out of the water. There's so much air in her fur. So in order to keep that air in their fur or get that air in their fur, they have to groom. And at this age, 2 months old, Katmai was just barely starting to learn. And these instincts just kind of happen. So you'll see her here. She's kind of brushing herself, but we've left her fur nice and wet. And the human is sort of using a towel to dry off some of the fur, but leaving some of it wet so that Katmai had that natural instinct to mess with it and just start figuring out how to do it on her own. But it takes months for them to develop that ability to groom themselves. By the time they're 6 months old, these little otters are quite independent. But when we have had to care for them the whole time getting to that point, it's just too much that they've missed out on from their moms, and they've gotten too close to people, so we're not able to release them back out into the wild. We have sent quite a few of our little sea otter pups to the Vancouver Aquarium, and many aquariums around the United States and even now across the globe here to facilities in Europe. So every time we rescue an otter pup, we know it's not going to stay here. We don't have a permanent habitat for sea otters, but we are happy to care for them. And can I hire you to look after otters? Sure, Mally, come on over. I'm not sure if anybody's hiring anybody right now. Just trying to keep on keeping on, right? But these animals are amazing. I will tell you, Mally, just recently, for the first time ever, I got to hold one, and it was pretty cool. They do have some scary teeth, but when they're little bitty, they're pretty amazing. So you think they look like little teddy bears? That's absolutely how they are when they're really tiny. Pretty quickly they start to become extremely curious, and the teeth that they have are very powerful. So you have to be really careful. So the one that I handled here it had passed its quarantine period, which meant we passed all the tests that we knew it didn't have any of the diseases that we know of to look for that could be passed to people or other animals. And she was still really young, and I was able to hold her, and she was pretty calm. But when they get squirrely and start getting restless, they start teething, they can get pretty fussy and like to chew on things with their teeth. And these guys have some pretty serious teeth. I showed you in that video that for the little baby, we had chopped up little tiny pieces of clam, right? But adult otters will just take the whole clam and eat it, shell and all. They'll just crush that with their teeth. They can bite down with the power of a black bear. Let me show you the teeth of the sea otter here. They have these crushing molars in the back. They're super hard, very strong. And so even though these animals are pretty tiny, smallest marine mammals in the world, they have incredibly strong jaws and the ability to crush their food because the food that they eat is often covered in hard shells. They've got these neat little paws in the front, and they're able to swim down and collect a bunch of animals off the bottom, crabs, clams, mussels. They come back up and eat them, shell and all. And you can hear the crushing sounds. All right, these are probably my personal favorite marine mammals. For one of the reasons why is because they're always so busy. We see them all around in our area here, and they're almost always eating. The reason for that is they have a very high metabolism, and that just means like how fast do you burn your energy? How much food do you need to process to keep your body going? And how quickly do you do that? Otters have a very high metabolism. To give you a comparison to people, if I were a sea otter at my size, I would have to eat about 150 cheeseburgers a day. Every day, 150 cheeseburgers if I were a sea otter. That's how much food they eat, about a quarter of their body weight every day. And so you might imagine, if you're thinking about the whole ecosystem, the whole environment out there with all the other animals and things, one sea otter, even though it only might weigh, say, 20 kilograms, is going to eat 5 kilograms of other animals every day. That's a lot of clams and mussels and crabs, shrimp, every single day. So they make a big difference out there in the world. And if you take those sea otters away, the whole habitat will change, the whole ecosystem, because of all those other animals that are involved. All right. Well, I would like to give you an opportunity to ask me a couple questions, and I'll just point the camera at Pilot here and scan the chat here for questions before we wrap up. Do they actually have cuddle parties like on Finding Dory? They do exist in big groups called rafts. In some areas. I don't know if you call it a cuddle party, but they do like hold hands to kind of steady themselves. Mally, did you have a question? Sorry.
I was just going to read them, if that would help you all. So Emily asked, can you keep an otter as a pet?
No, all marine mammals in the U.S., they're all protected by federal law, the Marine Mammal Protection Act, and so you have to have specific permit from the U.S. government to be able to keep them as a educational facility or research facility even, and the same or something similar is true with other countries. We have to have these agreements between the United States government and the foreign government wherever we're sending that otter. And we have kind of an established relationship with Canada, so that works pretty well, and it can go pretty quickly for us to bring in a sea otter, and if the Vancouver Aquarium would like to bring in another otter into their facility, that can happen pretty quickly in a matter of a couple of months. But if we are sending an animal to a new facility overseas, it could take over a year, even almost 2 years in some cases, to get all the paperwork straightened out in those governments to decide, who gets to care for that sea otter and how. So they are definitely not free for the taking for pets in your home. I can just about guarantee you wouldn't want one in your house, as cute as they are, because of the amount of food that they eat. It's just kind of shocking when you put it all together for such a tiny animal to eat that much food. But also, those little paws that they have can take apart pretty much anything. You probably wouldn't have any electronics left in your home if you let a sea otter just run around. They can unscrew bolts, and you have to have a specifically, specially designed habitat for a sea otter to keep them safe and keep your habitat safe also.
So they must be pretty smart. So
they are super ambitious little creatures.
So just because boys and girls, we have to go in a minute. If you have more questions, you can use the form on the connectednorth the at-home site and email them to me, and I'll send them to Darren. But I promise connect with Darren again. Like we know we are. We'll just book him for some sessions in May because everybody loves Darren's, and we could even do this session again and do the same animals, but just leave longer times for questions. But we'll just do one about the sea lions. Do sea lions eat salmon?
They do indeed eat salmon, yes. So the Steller sea lions, they like to focus on whatever fish are sort of easiest to catch, but they also have their favorites. And so salmon in particular will all return to a river at the same time, and there'll just be tons of them at once. And so it makes a really easy catch, but they're nice and high in fat, which is what these animals love. And so they have this super great gathering of fish. It happens automatically. But the sea lions will also find gatherings of things like herring, and pollock are not super high in fat, but if they're easy for the sea lions to catch, we see them eating quite a few pollock too. That's a type of cod. It's really low in fat. It's what we use for fish sticks for humans, and so it's a nice light meat. But sea lions kind of take what's easy. Turns out that salmon is one of their favorites, and at certain times is also easy. So there'll be just a real smorgasbord for those animals.
Awesome. So thank you so much, Darren. This was just great. We'll see you again.
You are very welcome.
And our next session is actually talking with the Vancouver Aquarium about the ocean plastic problem. So,
right. Awesome.
Yeah. So
you guys are fantastic.
They are. You guys are all fantastic. Just absolutely fantastic. So Kieran says thanks. Oh, sorry, Darren.
Mally had a quick question for you. You sent that CILC request for April 8th, but we had been talking about the 9th. Can I just send the 9th as an alternate? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Katie and I were discussing the 9th.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, we'll figure all that out.
All right.
So much.
We'll get that set up. Cool.
So see you guys soon. And thanks, Darren. And thanks everyone for coming. Kieran and Tristan and Emily and Gibbler and Gabby and Emily and Mason. They're from all over. You've got somebody from the Yukon, so your next door neighbor.
Hey, all right. Awesome. Thanks a bunch, you guys.
Hey,
Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.